The SNAP group traveled into the Callowhill neighborhood to study how the area has changed since its industrial era. The first encounter was Reading Terminal Market, located on 12th and Arch. Reading Terminal Market is the oldest continuously operating farmers markets. It is run by devoted Amish merchants from Lancaster County. The market houses every type of cuisine and brings in many tourists because it is the greatest public market in the country. Families come to the market with children in order to shop for food for dinner for the week. They can get a variety of food at the market. As students, we found that the market is culturally diverse and cost-friendly, which furthers our conclusion that the market is an easy place for families to grocery shop. Most of the food is locally grown and fresh, giving people better options than the local supermarket. Vendors also sell homemade goods. The market was a formal rail hub for the Reading Railroad. After its era, the location evolved into a farmers market. Being easily accessible to people in the city and the surrounding suburbs, it quickly became a one-stop shop for everyone. Its location further drives the ethnically diverse groups of people that do their shopping on a daily basis. The location acts as a central location for people to gather in groups and socialize while experiencing different cuisines. The Reading Terminal Market is a diverse location that provided us the opportunity to observe people going about their daily routine.
The transition going from downtown Center City at Reading Terminal Market into the Callowhill area was significant. We go from having very populated streets and new buildings into the deserted areas with run-down bridges.
Morihata International is a store that sells Japanese imported goods. From talking to an employee, we learned that most people come into Morihata for the unique goods and usually eat at the cafe nearby. However, these people do not hang around the area. Morihata is significant because it blends together the American, Chinese, and Japanese cultures in one store.
Walking through the heart of Callowhill, we saw many large contrasts. We go from seeing old rundown buildings on one side of the street to bright, shiny new ones on the other. Even the cars lining the streets were a significant indicator of what has changed in the area since it was first developed. You can see the old cobblestone that lines the street and how the area was once so beautiful but now lays abandoned, along with the building across the street. The skyscrapers are visible from every angle, showing the harsh contrast between the old and the new. Buildings are being torn down to make way for bigger, newer condos. Even the new buildings, though, can't seem to draw people with their new shiny fences and exteriors, but a for rent sign lays in the window.
The Union Transfer was built in 1889, originally as the Spring Gardens Farmers Market. Between the years of 1918 and 1942, the Farmers Market went through a change that made it become the Union Transfer Baggage Co. The next 50 years brought numerous more changes. Changes like becoming a tire shop, a trust company, and even a spaghetti warehouse. It wasn't until 2011 that the Union Transfer became Philadelphia's music venue. There's a variety of shows that the music venue hosts, which go from indie rock to hip-hop and everywhere in between. The Union Transfer also is known for having many live bands, as well as sourcing several Philadelphia-based businesses.
On our way to the Red Cross, we stopped to chat with Reverend Popo and Maxwell. Reverend Popo is also a cop, and Maxwell is an aide to Mayor Nutter. We talked to them about how Callowhill is going through a change in its identity. It went from being a hub in the heyday of the Reading Railroad to being a desolate area that is now part of Callowhill. During the Reading Railroad heyday, many factories were there. People flocked to the area for jobs, and therefore houses were built for all the people there. All the factories are now abandoned because the railroad era has ended, and condos are starting to take the place. Instead of tearing the old buildings down, they're left to stand there and fall into pieces before they can be repaired. The Reading Viaduct is also a major part of that area's identity. During the Reading Railroad heyday, it was a major part of the railroad. No one could get anywhere without that area. Now it lays abandoned, just like the other factory buildings. Hopes are high, though, that the area can be changed into a raised rail park to rejuvenate the area. With all the new money being pumped into the area, crime follows it. Although drug trafficking is down, it is still a problem in the area, and violent crimes are still taking place. Despite all of its hardships, Reverend Popo and Maxwell are hopeful that Callowhill will have a bright future.
Edgar Allan Poe was a great American author who changed literature with his unique writing style. He had several houses in Philadelphia, however, there is only one left standing. The house in the Spring Garden neighborhood has been transformed into a National Historic Site. The German Society is another example of cultural variety in Callowhill.
A microcosmic example of the constant state of redevelopment in the Callowhill neighborhood comes from the Somerset Knitting Mills story. In the 1950s and 60s, urban renewal policies cleared African American residential neighborhoods with the aim of rehabilitating declining areas. During these processes, streets running from west to east were removed in order to create what are known as superblocks, intended to accommodate large industrial parks. Concurrently, a Philadelphia Chamber of Commerce organization was financing the construction of 196 industrial and wholesale buildings and the renovation of 244 more in the city of Philadelphia. One such building would later become, in 1974, the Somerset Knitting Mills factory. Somerset Knitting Mills pulled its workforce from the surrounding blighted area. The factory's employees for years were largely poor ethnic minorities. However, by 1992, the employment base in the Callowhill and Chinatown areas had declined enough that the factory could no longer afford to stay open, and it vacated the premises. Sometime later, the American Red Cross acquired the building and converted it into the company's blood processing operations center for the Philadelphia region. The factory that had provided so many jobs for the urban poor in the neighborhood had now been converted into another, albeit different, wage-producing use. Today, the area around Old Somerset Knitting Mills exhibits the many phases of Callowhill's development. The streets predominantly occupied by old, rundown row houses are also peppered with brand-new condominiums. The now-abandoned Reading Viaduct stands watch nearby, while a part of the old factory still remains. Many other buildings have been updated to provide for current and future development. A concert hall now exists in a building that used to be an electric factory. This concert hall, coincidentally, is called the Electric Factory. It's hosted several famous musicians over the years and is another example of development in Callowhill. Callowhill has begun to develop its own culture, with the Electric Factory and Union Transfer being just some of the arts and culture venues. The Electric Factory has brought economic development and some degree of tourism to the region. Also, it is a primary example of development, even in old and abandoned buildings, for modern use.
The Trestle Inn, once a beautiful hotel and bar located near another rail hub, but now a dive bar, completed the tour of Callowhill. On the way back to Reading Terminal, we continued to see the harsh contrast between modern-day money and the forgotten place of Callowhill. As we reflected on the afternoon, Reverend Popo and Maxwell were correct. Callowhill is making a comeback, and with more love from the city of brotherly love, Callowhill will flourish again. The development is attracting many young professionals to the area with its low-cost housing and close to the city commute. With their help, Callowhill should be able to return to its former grandeur of its past and once again be considered an integral part of Philly.